We will go ahead and convene special education. We will convene a special hearing of the Education Committee today. Secretary, call the roll.
Romero?
Here.
Romero here. Huff?
Here.
Huff here. Alquist?
Here.
Alquist here. Hancock?
Here.
Hancock here. Lou?
Here.
Lou here. Maldonado? Padilla? Semidian? Wyland?
Here.
Wyland here. Yes, 6.
Okay, we have a quorum. Members, thank you for meeting today. We are convening to hear one bill. This is Assembly Bill 35 by Assembly Member Hagman, ABX 3. Well, actually, in third session, AB 35. And this is regarding the rather curious case that occurred in Chino Valley Unified School District, where apparently the adults messed up, but the children seem to be paying the price. We have concerns about this, although this bill is directed only to one particular district in California. We want to make sure that we establish that. We do want to, of course, ensure that this issue raises a red flag for us members of the committee to think about, as we go forward, what type of policy we might need to introduce to specifically address this. We had thought about doing something immediately in this bill, but because of the time constraints and the cost that these children and their families are bearing in trying to figure out what to do with the mistake that was made on the part of the adults in the system, we figured let's run this bill, but it is an issue that we may want to come back and visit in terms of policy. So having said that, let me turn to Assembly Member Hagman. Welcome, and please present on your bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Is this on or push the button? The red light will come on. Okay, there we go. It's a little bit different on our side. Thank you very much for having this special hearing today, and it is an urgency type of bill. There are 2 schools out of 24 in Chino Valley Unified School District, K through 6th grades, that through a counting mistake were off. One school, respectively, 10 minutes off on their minimum day schedule, and the other one was 5 minutes off on their minimum day schedule. They have fully put in their 54,000 minutes of education for the year, and they self-audited. They found the mistake themselves and brought it to the attention of the Department of Education. I think that's where the problem was, because most of the time they get you find out the problem and then you go out and appeal it. But in this case, they brought it to attention, so they're trying to fix it. I was brought aware of the situation 4 or 5 weeks ago, and know the students of those schools. My kids are both those ages, although not in that school. And the one in Chino Hills has about a 903 API score, and the one in Chino Valley, now the 10 minutes short per minimum day. And the other school had roughly 760, I believe, API score in Chino Valley, and the other ones were 5 minutes late. Long story short, we're trying to help with the parents. The parents contacted my office. I was former mayor of that city this very short time ago, and trying to figure out what they should do about their summer plans. They have, like most kids do that age, lots of plans: soccer camp, basketball camp, horseback riding, and such. So we came up with this language to try to find a compromise of making the school district pay a price, at the same time not punishing the kids for the entire summer, 34 extra days of education. The compromise with all the parties to be on the assembly side at least was 10 days. And we put that language in for here for the school district to try to do the 10 days. As you know, they can't put the 34 days in this school or this fiscal year anyway, which ends tomorrow. They don't have enough time to do so. So again, they're in violation of California law because they can't replete the days there. So we're here to try to push this bill through as quickly as we can. We had 100% yes votes in education, 100% yes votes in appropriation, and I believe 76 or 77 votes on the floor here in the Assembly to pass this bill out. Not sure how much more detail you want to go into. The assistant superintendent who was on claim responsibility, she retired. And the superintendent has also left the school district for another employment. And so there are a few heads rolling in the school district, which I believe is appropriate because this was a mistake on their end. But I'm hoping not to have the students face the penalty of why they get penalized for the district mistake. So with that, I'd be happy to answer your questions, but respectfully ask you your aye vote on this.
Let's ask for witnesses in support, witnesses in opposition. Questions from the committee, and Senator Huff, let's begin with you because this also is in your district, correct?
Right. I'm just going to clarify that both City of Chino and Chino Hills is in my district. I'm a co-author on this bill and urge your aye vote. The kids shouldn't have to pay more than they already have for the mistakes of the adults.
Any other questions from committee members?
I move the bill.
Let's just a little bit more discussion before we actually get that motion made. Any other questions? Let me just ask, you indicated that the superintendent has moved to take employment elsewhere. I understand that, and perhaps it's half of one and half a dozen of one and 6 of the other. Thank you. I was told that the superintendent has taken responsibility and resigned. Now, those could be the same thing. They could be different things. Could you
Two different
clarify?
people. Yes, ma'am. The actual superintendent, Dr. Heatley, has left and moved to another district on his own accord with a little pushing. The assistant superintendent who took the responsibility for this publicly, she has resigned, and she has since retired. She is no longer employed by anywhere. And I believe I have multiple calls with the school board pretty much daily on this, trying to find out what our actions are to give the parents and the school district instructions. But a lot of the administration is under review right now.
All right. And day 10 actually occurred on Friday, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is actually day 11.
Correct. They plan to continue to have the kids go to school until they hear otherwise. So that's why the urgency.
Let me just ask a couple of questions that, of course, will not be specifically addressed in this bill, but it does raise a red flag for the future. Does the remedy that's proposed by the bill and in the way in which you've authored it tend to somewhat undercut current penalties and other options that the legislature puts forward? I mean, we have a system of penalties for a reason. Does this begin to set the tone that says, go ahead, adults mess up, come back to the legislature, we admonish and say tisk, 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 and then we go ahead and vote you out? What implications does this have as a legislature in terms of the teeth that perhaps come with any penalties?
Well, my understanding, Madam Chair, is there is a review process that normally does take effect. That is, if the state of California does audit school districts and find out they were lacking in one of their multiple points they need to do, they will have a remedy, and they go through a process to the Board of Education. Unfortunately, like I said, this school district self-reported this mistake, and so they're trying to fix it in the same calendar year right now, which is the time crunch on it. We worked very diligently to try to come up with something that did make them pay a price, at the same time not fully penalize those children for 34 days. As it is, they'll probably do 12. If everything goes as quickly as we can here, they'll still be doing 12. The school district still has to be reviewed as far as their quality of education and the rest. This is not a district that's been having administration problems like this in the past. They're not repeat offenders. They made a mistake. They caught it. They're trying to resolve it as quickly as they can. And to this is more for me on behalf of the children more than the school district there. I think there are rules and regulations there for a reason, to try to catch those who try to violate the rules and to make sure our children get their full education. In this particular case, they did get their 54,000 minutes. They're doing very well in their districts. This was not a conscious decision by the school district to try to cheat those children out of their minutes of education. And hopefully there's a process, and maybe that's something for us to review in the future, that there's not apples and oranges being compared in every circumstances, but we can look at the individual things and do penalize the school districts when they do things wrong. At the same time, when there are mistakes made, especially these budget times where we're cutting them. I went down to report on this a couple weeks ago at a school board meeting, and they were going through their budget cuts and what they have to do over the next two years, and they're on the verge of being. I'm not an educator, and I don't have that committee. But when you get disqualified for not having enough money, they're on the verge of that right now. Their penalty over their head for not completing this is $7 million, which they're already 24 short. Over the next 2 years, they have to cut. I'm looking at trying to save as many of those teachers' jobs and for the students.
Let me ask one more question, because this is a little bit unusual. I understand there's 2 tracks that are running. The school district is running its request past the State Board of Education, and they are scheduled to be heard, I believe, at the July 8th hearing. My understanding at that time is that the State Board may not be in concurrence with what the district is asking. But we have that path that would be the normal path to go through the State Board of Education. In a sense, we're running on a legislative track. This isn't unusual. It's a temporary. It's emphasized in the bill that this is a temporary, but it is something that we're doing on another track. Some people have said it's an end run. We're thinking we're stepping up as the adults as well to try to rectify and correct the issue given the time frame that we see. But can you address this question, and what commitment from the governor's office do you have in affixing his signature to this measure? Because the state board is doing one issue, we're doing another. Do you have any idea where the administration is on this bill?
Well, I have not spoken to the governor himself. I have spoken to a couple of lower staff members, and they seem to be pretty comfortable with this solution. There were a lot of people saying less days, more. Some people saying there wasn't enough. They should do the full penalty. I thought this was a reasonable compromise. It was actually suggested by the Education Committee staff when they wrote this up, and they put the requirements to have the teachers be negotiated for their pay, and for the librarian and the school nurse, and all the things you would have in a normal school day there. I will. Obviously, as soon as we get through this committees, I'll be shooting down to there to go talk to them and try to get their insurances to sign it as soon as we get passed out of this House. What I'm hoping for as far as future solutions is, again, to have the school board meeting, state school board meet 4 times a year after the problem already existed, if there's not a process. And that's where I think the process should be. Hopefully give the tools to that school board to be able to address situations like this so we don't have to try to figure it out from the dais. We should get some guidelines and some tools in the toolbox for reasonable people to make reasonable recommendations and decisions. But sometimes we box them in with so many rules and regulations, there is no choice. The law is what it is, and they can't change it. We can. And hopefully that's something we can discuss in this next cycle and see if there are more flexibility, especially with the budget cuts that we do have, to really what we're trying to do is make sure those students get the best education as possible.
All right. The bill has been moved by Senator Ahlquist. Sure. One comment? Mm-hmm.
I know that I moved the bill, and I'm happy to do that as a former teacher and a school board member and certainly parent. What I would suggest for next year is that we really look at the process so that we don't end up with lost instruction. There's got to be some reporting process that would take care of this in the future.
All right. Point well taken. Senator Hancock.
Yeah, I will vote for this bill, too. I do agree that we need to look at it in the future, and we need to look at all the regulations that we're placing on schools at a time when we're going to be cutting their money. And I sit on the state allocation board now, and we've developed something that we're calling the mercy clause for administrative error, as Senator Weiland knows. And I would just like to say that maybe we're getting more compassionate, but I've been on this committee when there were some pretty scathing things said about some low-income school districts, frankly, where the adults didn't do the accounting right. And I'm happy to support this, and I hope that we will put the compassion, the mercy clause, and the intention of cutting red tape and over-reporting for all our schools on our agenda.
Okay, on a merciful note, the motion has been made. Secretary, call the roll.
Romero?
Aye.
Romero, aye. Huck? Huck, aye. Ahlquist?
Aye.
Ahlquist, aye. Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Lou? Lou, aye. Maldonado? Padilla? Semidian?
Aye.
Semidian, aye. Wyland?
Aye.
Wyland, aye. 7-0.
Okay, 7-0. The bill is out. Senator Padilla was called to a meeting in the Pro Tem's office, but he expressed that he was supportive of the bill. I know he's not official in the role, but I want to go ahead and just reflect that his intent was to vote for the bill. Okay, thank you.